All right. So, welcome to our LSAT information session. My name's Aaron Lind. I'm a longtime LSAT instructor here at the Princeton Review. I've been teaching the LSAT for over 16 years now. I'm also a graduate of McGill's Faculty of Law. I graduated in 2011. I've been helping students get into law school, both at the LSAT and with working on their applications. If you want to get a hold of me, I have my email here, infocanada@review.com. Desmond's the outreach specialist here who helped set this up. I have his information here as well. And feel free to reach out with him with any questions about enrolling in courses or what might your options be for preparing for the LSAT. And so I am set up in such a way so I can see the chat. So I know there's only one of you, but what year of university are you in?
So I just finished my fourth year of
Oh,
university. Yeah.
so are you graduating or do you have another year going to go?
Yeah. So I should have one more year,
Okay.
depending on it's like 15 more credits that I need. So I could do it in one semester. I'll probably just spread it out for the
Yeah,
entire
yeah,
year.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
because what are you going to do graduating in December anyway, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
cool. All right. So talking about the LSAT, what is the LSAT here? LSAT stands for the Law School Admissions Test. As its name suggests, it is used for admissions to law school. LSAC, the Law School Admissions Council, is the organization that creates and administers the LSAT. They are located in Newtown, Pennsylvania, which is a rural community in Pennsylvania where you have a bunch of people with advanced degrees, some of them with multiple PhDs, that sit around and write test questions for a living. They also help students, mostly in the United States, apply to law school. Canadian law schools tend to do things a bit differently. We'll talk about that. But you do need to use LSAC to register for the LSAT. Registration there at lsac.org. So it is a digital test. Currently, it's being offered in live remote proctored format at home. In the past few weeks, LSAC has announced that starting in August, there will also be the opportunity to take the test proctored live in person. So this is a relatively new announcement. It will still be a digital test. In fact, before the pandemic, they had already moved to a digital test. The way they administer the test in person is that they hand out tablets. They are Microsoft Surface Go's. So it's like Microsoft Surface is like their version of the iPad, and the Go is their lowest version. So it's kind of like a third-rate iPad, but it does the job. Does the job for what they need to do for the test. There were 8 test dates in the 2022-2023 cycle. We're expecting those test dates to be pretty similar in 2023-2024. We are, in fact, just getting confirmation. I think for through January, we have confirmation now. I would have to double check exactly, but gives an idea of when the test is being offered. So the LSAT can be taken up to 3 times in a testing year. The testing year for the LSAT is roughly equivalent to the school year, though it usually starts in June. 5 times within the last 5 testing years and 7 times in a lifetime. So you can't just take the LSAT over and over and over until you get the score that you want. You do need to make sure that you are prepared to take it. Do note that law schools will see all scores when you send your scores to the law schools, unless you've canceled them. They will see all those scores. Most law schools will take either the highest score or the most recent. The most common policy in Canada is the highest score. There are a handful of schools that do average scores. And so we'll talk about research in a little bit. But one of the things you want to do is be researching what are the policies of the law schools that you're interested in to make sure that you're setting yourself up in a way to be successful. You do need to register early, even with the taking the test at home, which is still going to be an option, at least through the beginning part of this next school year, because they are live proctored. There are human beings at the other side of the computer that are watching you and making sure that there's no funny business going on. Test dates do fill up. And in fact, with the test being online, it's ironically changed which dates are busy because the American cycle is slightly different than the Canadian cycle. Our experiences with Canadian students, the most popular time to take the LSAT is in the summer, whereas for Americans, the most popular time to take the LSAT is in the fall. And so the fall test dates, if you're taking it at home, do tend to be a little bit more difficult to get. So you want to register early. The cost is $215 US. Yes, they charge you in USD. Now, most students take the LSAT in the spring of third year. And by this kind of information, we mean that these are the people that are intending to graduate in 4 years and start law school after fourth year. You can take the LSAT earlier, but you don't want to take it too early because most schools want to see an LSAT score within the past 3 years. It also means if you're planning on taking a gap year, for instance, you also want to, that will affect when you plan on taking the LSAT as well. So on the LSAT, one of the most important things to know about the LSAT is the LSAT does not test you on any law. The LSAT is not a test that is testing you on really any content at all. There are no university prerequisites. If you have any friends that are pre-med, you might hear them talking about needing to make sure they take chemistry and psychology and on this whole list of classes before they take the MCAT. LSAT's not like that whatsoever because the LSAT doesn't test content. Rather, it tests reading comprehension, logic skills, and analytic skills. Now, these are things that hopefully during your time in university you are honing, but there isn't any sort of specific class that you need to or should take in order to prepare you for the LSAT as far as university goes. The structure of the test, there are 4 multiple choice sections of 35 minutes each. And these sections can be in any order. They do not have to be in this order. You'll have one analytical reasoning section, which we refer to as games. Most people refer to it as games or logic games, though it's confusing because it's analytical reasoning, not logical reasoning. One reading comprehension section, everyone calls it reading comprehension. One logical reasoning section, which a lot of people, including us here at the Princeton Review, will refer to as arguments. And then one experimental section that will be an additional games, reading comprehension, or argument section. And so the experimental section does not count towards your score. You won't be able to tell that it's experimental. It's not like it will be obviously different from the other sections. Rather, it's there for the LSAT to prepare questions for future administrations. There are also often standard questions so they can see how this year's cohort of LSAT takers compare to previous years. They want to make sure that their scaling makes sense so students who've taken the test in different years can be compared, at least within roughly a 5-year window. Those 3 sections that count towards your score will add up to approximately 75 questions, and these are converted in a score range from 120 to 180. Now, there is an addition to these multiple choice sections, there is a writing sample that you need to take. You don't take it on the day of the LSAT, at least you don't have to, you probably shouldn't. You'll log into your LSAT account. You'll type up your essay anytime after the LSAT date within 1 year. Actually, you have up to 8 days before your LSAT date to write this essay. And you do have to complete the writing sample before you can see your LSAT score. So the writing sample is a very bizarre piece of the LSAT. My personal theory is that it exists in part because you need to do a lot of writing in law school. And so the folks at the LSAT feel like, well, we should have some writing on the test, but they don't want to pay to have people scored. So the writing sample is sent to law schools. So you want to make sure that your writing is intelligible, it's clear, it answers the question, but it is a 35-minute essay. And so law schools understand that this is not going to be the most brilliant piece of writing you've ever created. The prompts don't really let you write a brilliant piece of writing anyway. Give it its due, do well on it, and it shouldn't affect your application at all. Now, some basic advice. First of all, you want to prepare for the LSAT. And the best way to start is to take a practice test. You can use the chat or you can do thumbs up or whatever, thumbs down, thumbs up, yes, thumbs down, no. Have you taken a practice test of the LSAT? All right. So we have a free practice test on our website. You can log into the Princeton Review, take a free practice test. When you take a practice test, very, very important to do it all in one sitting. Put aside about 2.5 hours to take the test and do it timed. One of the mistakes I often see people starting the LSAT do is they take the LSAT untimed. They give themselves as much time as they think they need. And they're like, hey, okay, I got this. The timing on the LSAT is incredibly tough. It is a very difficult test time-wise. A lot of what makes the LSAT challenging really is just that you don't have enough time. Now, you also want to plan ahead. In our experience, successful LSAT takers take typically between 2 and 3 months of preparation for the LSAT. And during those 2 to 3 months, we're talking like 10 to 20 hours a week working on LSAT. And so it's really like having a part-time job. It's a significant commitment in order to be successful on the LSAT. Now, another piece of advice, there is no guessing penalty, so you shouldn't leave any blanks. If there's questions that you're totally baffled by, questions that you don't have time for, you want to make sure you allot time to at the very least click through and put in something, because you still have a 20% chance of getting the question right, and there's no penalty for getting it wrong. Finally, even though the timing is so important, accuracy is much more important than speed. For instance, to get a 160, you need to get about 3/4 of the test correct. So a valid way to do so, in the game section, there'll be 4 games. Do 3 of them. Guess the 4th. In reading comp, there'll be 4 reading comprehension passages. Do 3 of them. Guess the 4th. In arguments, you have approximately 25 arguments, so aim to do 18 to 20. If you do that with high accuracy, about 90% of the questions you do correct, that will on most tests get you right around 160. Which does lead to perhaps the most important question. What's a good LSAT score? Any ideas? Let's get you put it in the chat or whatever, but any ideas on what a good LSAT score is?
Just the wild guess for like 160.
The 160 is a number that very often gets kind of passed around and gets put out there. Now, in Canada, one of the nice things that we have is that none of our law schools are really bad law schools. But the thing is, the flip side is that for most Canadian law schools, your competitive LSAT score tends to start around 160. The reason for that is that at most law schools, they get approximately 5 times the number of applications as they have spots. So they have an acceptance rate of about 20%. And a 160 tends to be right around 80th percentile. In other words, if you score a 160, you're in the top 20%. And so that's often how that kind of matches up. Now, most law schools in Canada are what are known as holistic. And so they'll look at things in addition to your LSAT and your GPA. They care about your extracurriculars, your personal statement, your letters of reference. But certainly the LSAT is a very important piece of the puzzle. And it's a piece that you can focus on specifically and see a lot of improvements quickly compared to things such as your grades. Grades are difficult to adjust, difficult to fix later on in your academic career, whereas the LSAT is something, once again, for most people, 2 to 3 really focused months can really see them be successful. So now registering for the LSAT, once again, we have lsac.org, the website where you're going to go in, you're going to create an account, and this is where you can register. They'll have the registration deadlines, the fees. They'll give you all the information that you need in order to register for the LSAT. Now, one piece of advice when you are doing this is that unless you know for sure that you're going to be applying to American law schools, do not sign up for the Credential Assembly Service. The Credential Assembly Service is, well, a service that the LSAT offers where if you're applying to American law schools, rather than sending every single law school your transcript, your letters of reference, the sorts of things that get repeated over and over again, you send that just to LSAC, you pay the money to do this, and then they forward that in on over to the law schools. Canadian law schools do not use the Credential Assembly Service, and so if you don't apply to U.S. schools, you don't need to pay for it. So any questions before we jump into some sample LSAT questions?
No, not that I can think of.
All right, cool. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a game. The reason we're going to look at a game is because for most people, when they first start studying for the LSAT, games is the most unfamiliar, the strangest part of the test. Reading comprehension. You have passages, about 750 words. You have 5 to 8 questions about each passage. It feels pretty familiar. You're used to reading. You're just answering questions about what you read. Arguments are shorter passages, like 3 to 10 lines long, 1 question per passage, dealing with the logic of the passage, the logic of the reasoning, but at least superficially, that section also feels fairly familiar. And then there's games. Most people's initial response to seeing games on the LSAT is like, what is this section? Why does it exist? What does this show law schools about my capability to be a good law student, be a good lawyer? Luckily, in my experience and experience of my colleagues, for the vast majority of LSAT takers, games is the section they find easiest to improve. It's the section where the patterns in the test are more obvious, and it's the section that once you know an approach, it becomes easier to improve and it becomes easier to feel comfortable. And so what I want to do tonight is to walk through a game and give you an idea of, okay, this is what a game looks like. This is what the Princeton Review's approach is about, and the ways you can start preparing for this section. So here we have what we call the setup. On the computer test, you'll have this information on the left side of the screen. You'll have the question on the right side of the screen. We need to make sure we have enough space. I know some of you might be on iPhones or whatever. That's why we don't have it set up that way. So here, a cartographer is creating a map of the biomes of 6 countries, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Each country contains at least one of the following 3 types of biomes: mangrove, savanna, and taiga, and no other types. The following conditions must be observed. And then we have these indented statements that tell us about the countries and the biomes that they may have. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out what our initial setup is going to be. We want to ask ourselves, what is the task? In LSAT games, typically we're either putting things into order or we're putting things into group. Here we can see we're putting things into groups. We're deciding, okay, we have the countries and we're putting what sort of biomes are in that country, but there's no arrangement. There's no like the countries are north to south or anything like that. They're just kind of abstract out there. Then we need to figure out what the inventory and the diagram is. The inventory are the pieces of the game we'll play with. These are the things that are going to be moving about within our game. And the diagram is going to be the thing that's fixed. We can think about it as our game board. And we want our diagram to be readable, reproducible, and representative of what's happening in the game. So looking at this game, once again, we note that order doesn't matter. We have these 6 countries, 3 biomes. And so what I'm going to do, I know that my 6 countries are fixed. I always have 6 countries. That doesn't change. And so I'm going to make that my diagram. And most of the time, really as much as possible, I want to make my diagram a chart because it'll help me stay organized. It'll make it easier for me to see what work have I already done, what am I working on now, and what do I need to work on next. And then my game pieces are, well, the other things we have going on, these 3 biomes. And so rather than write out these 3 biomes, I'm just going to refer to them by their first letters, M, S, and T. Now, in this particular game, I also note that M's, S's, and T's, I could have multiple countries with each. In fact, I have to because I know that each country has at least 1 biome. So if I want to extend my metaphor, I could think I have like a stack of M's, a stack of S's, a stack of T's, whatever. But these are the things that are going to be going into my diagram. And so I've looked at that initial paragraph, that initial couple of sentences. I figured out that I have a group game and my pieces are MST, and this is what I'm going to be working with. My next step is to work into those conditions, those indented statements, and I want to symbolize these clues. I want to turn LSAT's text into a statement that I can easily look at, glance at, and see what's going on. So I see my first one that says D in exactly 3 countries contain mangrove. So what I'm going to do is say that M is equal to D, and then those 3 other countries are unknowns. And so I'm going to use an underscore space to indicate I have those 3 unknowns. My next clue, F contains more types of biomes than E does. I'm just going to steal a math symbol. F is greater than E. Now, the third one, C does not contain any type of biome that A does. Once again, based on space, they don't have the diagram here, but C and A aren't really next to each other. Visualizing this is kind of difficult to do. So rather than visualize it, I'm just going to paraphrase it and say C and A don't share. Expresses the idea pretty clearly. B contains exactly 2 types of biomes. As with my first clue, I don't know what they are, so I'm going to say B has 2 unknowns with using underscores. The fourth clue, E contains savanna and taiga, so E has S and T. And my last clue is very similar to my third clue. A does not contain any type of biome that E contains. A and E don't share. Now, after having gone through and symbolizing all these clues, I want to make sure I double check my clues. This happens to almost everyone in the process of preparing for the LSAT. You're working along, you're hopefully practicing, you have a game, it feels like it goes really well, and you check your answers and you get most of the questions wrong. When that happens, go back and check your clues. Chances are you messed up a clue. The LSAT knows you better than you know yourself when it comes to taking the LSAT. They know the sorts of mistakes that you're likely to make, and they set up wrong answers based on those mistakes. And so one of the things we see over and over and over again, oh, this would be a really easy way to misinterpret this clue. If you play the game with the misinterpretation, you get answers for every question. It feels like everything goes smoothly, but you get almost everything wrong. So you want to be in the habit of double checking the clues. Now, when you double check the clues, what we're going to do is we're going to take the symbol and compare it to the text. We created the symbol by looking at the text first. By reversing our process, we're much less likely to make the same mistake twice. We're much more likely to catch an error if we've made one. So our first symbol says that M equals D and 3 unknowns. I check my text. Yes, that's what the first clue says. Second clue, F is greater than E. My second text contains more types of biomes. Yeah, that is the same idea. Third clue, C and A don't share. Yes, C does not contain any type of biome that A does. That is that idea. Fourth clue, B has 2 unknowns. B contains exactly 2 types of biomes. Great. Fifth clue, E is S and T. E contains savanna and taiga. Excellent. Last clue, A and E don't share. A does not contain any type of biome that E contains. Perfect. Now we're ready to move on to deductions. Deductions is a step that many people, when they start the LSAT, feel as if it's a little bit magical. You're either super brilliant and you look at a game and it's like, poof, everything just falls into place, or you're a normal person and you kind of flub through the step. The thing is that this step has patterns and it has repeated ideas across tests, the same as every other step. And so what we want to do is we want to have a process that helps us make deductions efficiently and accurately. And so what we want to do is we want to start by looking for the things that we can just put directly into the diagram. Our first clue says that M is in D, so well, I can just put M into D. Similarly, my fifth clue says that E has S and T. I'm going to put E into S and T. Now, I'm going to start checking my other clues based on this foundation and see what else can I figure out if I know these two things to be true. Well, E has S and T. My second clue said F had more than E. Well, there's only three pieces, M, S, and T. So if E has S and T, F must have M, S, and T. Similarly, my last clue also involves E. If E has S and T and A and E don't share, I know that every country needs something, so know that A must have M. Hey, now I know something about A, I can go to that third clue. The third clue says that C and A don't share. Well, if A has M, that means that C cannot have M. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tilde to indicate not. It's a standard philosophical indication for not. I'm going to put it above the column so I don't get it confused with what has to be true. By putting it above, it's saying this is what cannot be true. And now I note, hey, I just figured out a couple things about M, which is related to my first clue. My first clue said that D and three others need to have M. Well, I know that F has M, and I know that A has M. So I need one other country to have M. Well, C can't have M, we just deduced that. And E can't have M because then it's going to share with A and have the same number as F. The only country left that can have M is B. Now, B has two, so I know it's going to have M, and then it's going to have S or T. I don't know which. And so I'm going to use a slash to indicate that B has S or T, and then also M. Now, I note that I'm getting to the point where I've basically worked through all of my clues. I want to work through each of my countries to ensure that I've captured everything that I know about each country. So country A has M. Well, it can't have any more because of the A and E rule. Done. B has M and then S or T. There's no clue that's just going to help me figure out which one it has. There we go. Now, country C, the only thing we know about C is it doesn't have M. It will definitely need to have S or T, but it could have both. And so to indicate that, I'm going to use a parentheses for the spot that's optional. C absolutely must have one, which will be S or T, but it could have the other ones, so I'll put that in parentheses. Similarly, country D, the only thing I know about D from my clues is that it has to have M, which I've already done. And so I'm going to put in two parentheses to indicate that D could have more than just M. It could have two or even three. E has S and T, and as we've talked about before, it can't have M because then it would share with A. F has all three, and that's done. So by working through the deduction systematically, by going back to my clues and saying, okay, what can I figure out based on my clues? I'm able to figure out a lot more about this game than the information I was given up front. And this, and as we're going to see, this is one of the things that the LSAT is explicitly testing. They want to see your ability to take a given set of information and figure out things from that information. And now we're going to work questions. We want to do the questions that's in the order that's best for us, not just the order that the LSAT has given them to us. If a game has a grab a rule question, we want to start with it. About half the games will have a grab a rule. It's always the first question. A grab a rule question asks for a variation of the game that works. They're usually pretty obvious because the answer choices are a list of everything that's happening. We just grab rules, use them to eliminate. The second question type, what to do, specific questions almost always start with the word if. These questions provide an additional rule that applies only to that question. By answering these questions, we can fill out new lines in our diagram, learn more about the game, and be able to better answer future questions. General questions ask about the game in general. These we want to rely on both of our deductions and our previous work to help us determine what's going to be the best answer. Finally, complex questions are going to change the rules somehow. They may take a rule and make it into something different, or they may ask what you could replace a rule with that would result in the same game. Because these questions are playing with the rules that are the foundation of the game, we always want to do them last so we don't confuse ourselves in other questions. They are always the last question, and there's usually only one per test. So in this particular game, the first question we have that's specific is question 4. If exactly 3 countries contain exactly 2 biomes each, which of the following statements could be true? So for if questions, we're going to take the new information and we're going to draw rows in our diagram that show how that information could work. So we have 3 countries with 2 biomes each. Well, if I look at what always has to be the case, B and E must always have 3 biomes. Now, the country that could be the third country, I actually have 2 options. Either C could have 2 biomes or D could have 2 biomes. And so I'm going to have 2 different variations in which this particular question can play out. And so I'm going to write out both. Now, in my other countries, nothing is affecting anything that's happening in my other countries. So I can just literally fill in what I know. There's no rules that are going to affect, for instance, what B has. The other 3 are always the same. And so I'm just going to copy what I know. And then I'm going to fill in countries C and D for each of my 2 rows. Now, in my top row, if country C is my third country with 2 biomes, well, it has to be S and T because it can't have M. Now, just as importantly, in this version, I cannot have D have 2 biomes because the question said exactly 3 countries. And in this top row version, if D has 2 biomes, then I have 4 countries. And so either D will have just M or D will have all 3 in this particular version. Now, I still want to fill out the second row because I don't know where the answer to my question is coming from, and I might find this work useful in a future question. And so if D has 2 biomes, I know that D has M for sure. I don't know whether or not it has S or T, and so as I've done previously, I'll use a slash and indicate it's either S or T. Now, once again, because D in this case is the third country with 2 biomes, I cannot have C have 2. C can't have 3, so C must be stuck with 1, and it's going to be either S or T. Now, by doing this work, I'm set up to answer the question. It's asking which of the following statements could be true. I need to pay close attention to the way the LSAT phrases these questions because could is different from must. Could be true, we're just looking for something that's possible. Answer choice A, B and C have exactly 2 biomes in common. That's impossible, because if C has 2 biomes that has S and T, B can only ever have one of S or T. A is incorrect. Answer choice B, C and D have exactly 1 biome in common. Well, I could be in my second variation where C has S or T, and then D could have the same one. D could have, like, if C has S, D could be MS. If C has D could be MD, MT. And so this could be true. So I'm just going to choose it and move on. In games and in games alone, there is exactly 1 correct answer. Once I've proven that answer, I'm done. And the other 2 sections on the LSAT, the reading comprehension and the arguments, you get points for the best answer, which means you will spend much time looking at 2 or 3 answers and going, okay, what does the LSAT want? And so in those 2 sections, you must always read all 5 answer choices, and you always must use process elimination. In games, if you find an answer as part of your pacing, you need to trust your work, pick it, and move on. Now, in this particular game, this is the only specific question, the only if question. So we're going to circle back to question 1. Which of the following must be true? As I was talking about with question 4, with the could, with the must, we're looking for the thing that is always the case. And so here is where our deductions are going to be particularly helpful, because our initial deductions were things we figured out that were always true. So answer choice A, of the types of biomes contained in A, there's exactly one type that B also contains. Well, we know that country A always has just M. Never has anything else, never not has M. B always has M, and then S or T depending. But no matter what, A and B always contain M. And so A is always true. Once again, in the interest of efficiency, I need to pick A and move on, because it's the answer that will always be true. Now, question 1, our deductions made question 1 really easy. For question 2, our deductions are basically needed to make it possible. It is possible to determine exactly which of the 3 biomes each country contains for exactly how many of the 6 countries. Okay, I need to take a moment and really kind of tear this question apart. We need to know for how many of the countries do we know exactly which biomes each country contains? Okay, well, I get to count some basic math skills, but I can use my deductions here. Country A I know is M, so that's one country. B has some variation, C has some variation, D has some variation. I can't count any of those because they're not determined. E definitely has S and T. F has all 3. 3. C. This is a question that I don't think is actually possible without making deductions. I think if you do not make deductions, I cannot foresee a way you could really answer this question. Whereas with the deductions, once we've taken the time to understand the question, it's a matter of merely counting which are the countries that we've determined. Now, question 3 is adding a little twist here. Instead of asking which of the following must be true, this question's asking which of the following must be false. And so instead of asking what is always the case, we're now being asked for what is never the case. And so once again, we're going to look at our diagram, our deductions, but we can also consider our old work, because our old work, even if it was built off of that new clue for question 4, it does fulfill all of the other clues. And so we can trust that those are valid ways the game works. So answer choice A, exactly one of the 6 countries contains exactly one type of biome. Well, we know for sure that country A has to have one biome. C and D could have one biome, but A is the only one that has to have one biome. This is not something that must be false because it could be true. A is not our answer because it's possible. Similarly, answer choice B, exactly 2 of the 6 countries contain exactly one type of biome each. Well, A, once again, we always know is going to have exactly one biome, but C or D could have one biome. And in fact, we can see that in our old work. In the top row, we could have had D have just M, and the bottom row, C, is definitely going to have one. And so that is definitely something that could be true. We're looking for what must be false. B is incorrect. Answer choice C, exactly 3 of the 6 countries contain exactly one type of biome each. A, C, and D could all have just one apiece. That could be true. D, exactly one of the 6 countries contains exactly 2 types of biomes. Well, if we're looking for countries with 2 types of biomes, we know that country B has M and then S or T, so that country definitely has 2. And country E has S and T. So E also definitely has 2, which means that answer choice D is false, which means that it is our answer. Another error that I guarantee you will make at least once is that you'll be working a question and you'll forget what the question's asking. You'll get to answer choice D and be like, oh, wait, I can't have one country with 2 biomes, and you'll cross off D and pick E. Get in the habit of highlighting, paying close attention to the end of the question and keeping track of, am I looking for what's true? Am I looking for what's false? What am I looking for? The LSAT is hoping that you lose track of it through the process of looking through the answer choices. Now, question number 5, which of the following countries could, let's get our important word here, now we're just looking for a possibility, could contain all and only the same types of biomes as each other? Well, if it's saying all and only the same types of biomes as each other, we're looking for 2 countries that could be the same. So we go to our answers. A, countries A and B. Well, A has just M, B has M, and then S or T. They can never have all and only the same types of biomes. Answer choice A is not our answer. Answer choice B, B and E. B has M and then S or T. E has S and T. Countries B and E could never be identical. This is not our answer. Answer choice C, B and D. Well, I know that B has M and then S or T. D always has M. And then even if I look at that bottom row, I can see it's M/S and T for B, M/S and T for D. They could have both MS or MT. It could be the case that B and D have all and only the same types of biomes as each other. C is our answer. And now for our final question. Question 6, which of the following must be true? Once again, as we've been seeing, we're looking for exactly what the LSAT's asking for, looking for the thing that has to be true. Answer choice A, there's exactly one type of biome that both B and C contain. Well, B has M and then S or T. C has at minimum S or T. They do not have to have one type of biome that they both contain. For instance, B could have M and S, and C could have T. A is not something that must be true. It's not our answer. B, there's exactly one type of biome that both B and E contain. Well, B has M and then S or T. E has S and T. Well, if B has M and S, it'll share S with E. If B has M and T, it will share E with T. That means there must be one type of biome that they both contain, and so that's our answer. Despite the fact that we don't know which one is the same, we will definitely have something the same. All right, so Desmond, would you like to take over here to talk about preparing for the LSAT, or shall I go through this? I don't know if my colleague's here still. All right, I'll talk about this. So preparing for the LSAT is, once again, it's a process. In my experience and the experience of my colleagues, 2 to 3 months is pretty typical. And there's a lot of different ways to go about this. So tutoring or courses. One of the things that Princeton Review is best known for is our tutoring, our courses. I'll talk about some of those options in a few moments. But for a lot of people, having that structure, having a teacher to help them through learning the LSAT is really key. The LSAT has a lot of logic, a lot of thinking skills that are involved, and a lot of students find having that teacher really, really helpful. Books. There are books available that you can use to help you prepare for the LSAT. Princeton Review releases a series of LSAT prep books where we go through approaches, we go through questions, we can give you the strategies that you need in order to learn how to do better on the LSAT. Online tools. With our tutoring and courses, we offer online tools. We also have online tools available as a self-study. And so if you want access to online videos, online drills, but you don't want the structure or like the feedback from a teacher, that is something we offer. No matter which way you prepare, practice tests are key. In our courses, in our tutoring, we're going to assign practice tests. Because the LSAT is a digital test, you should be doing your practice tests on the computer. If you do decide to do tutoring or courses with us, You will, as part of purchasing that, will get access to Law Hub, which is LSAC system of practice tests. So don't go ahead and buy that separately if you decide to go working with us. But for a lot of people, that is the main way they go about preparing for the LSAT. Now, research, certainly that's something you're doing tonight, coming to free events, reading online, certainly always read with a grain of salt if you're on things such as forums, but there's a lot of information out there about the LSAT. And then finally, especially if you're somebody who's not taking the LSAT for a few years, reading skills are so important on this test that spending some time reading difficult texts, reading a variety of things can really help you be successful. So classroom courses are our most popular option, and really probably the most popular option for most LSAT takers, in part because they offer a few benefits. The first big one is structure. Studying for the LSAT can be really overwhelming. There's a lot to learn, and it's not content, which makes it even trickier. It's really skills based. And so in a course, you're going to be covering certain topics in different classes. You'll be assigned homework related to those topics. You'll know what to study when. You'll have that structure to help you be successful. Learning style, it's very similar to what you do in university. You go to class, you have a teacher, you have classmates. And so that sort of learning style is very similar. A lot of people find that familiarity very helpful. Certainly having expert instructors, someone like myself in front of the classroom, who is teaching you the materials, who's answering your questions, who's acting as a guide, as a cheerleader for you through this process is super helpful. And finally, other students are really beneficial, in particular because this test is so much about thinking skills and ways of approaching questions. Having other students that ask questions in ways that maybe you wouldn't have thought of can really help you learn more. And so options we offer, we have private tutoring. You're working one-on-one with a tutor. There's flexible scheduling, which is great, especially if you're busy. You have an unusual variable schedule that can work really well. You get a tailored syllabus. Your tutor will work with you to decide what do you need to cover when, what specific things do you need to work on to address your weaknesses and strengthen your strengths. You'll get comprehensive course materials. You get a series of 4 books plus online access. With Law Hub, you get access to every real LSAT question. If you're looking at the whole test, we recommend our comprehensive package, which is 30 hours, $5,000 plus tax. If there's a particular part of the test, let's say you really need to work on reading comprehension, we have a 10-hour package for $1,800 plus tax. Now, our most popular option is the LSAT 165 course. We offer a score guarantee that you'll score a 165 or improve by at least 7 points, whatever is lower. So let's say you start with a 153, we'll guarantee that you get at least a 160. If you start with like a 160, we guarantee you'll get at least a 165. This course is 84 classroom hours, so a lot of instructional time, but also a fair amount of drilling and reviewing time in class. Comprehensive course materials, once again, access to LSAT Prep Plus, many tests, physical materials. There are 6 full-length exams. In person, we offer it in Toronto and York and Vancouver for $1,999 Canadian. We also offer it live online, so you can take it from anywhere at $117.99 USD. No tax if you're taking a live online course. Now, if you're looking for a shorter course, we have our LSAT Fundamentals course. It's a smaller class size. Our average class size is 5 students. This is only 30 classroom hours. It's expected that you'll do a lot more of your preparation on your own. For full-length exams, access once again to LSAT Prep Plus, the Law Hub for all those tests. We offer it in many locations across Canada, $1,099 plus tax. We also offer it live online, $1,099 USD. We also have our self-paced course. This is the course where you get our online materials and physical materials. You get 1,500 hours of on-demand recorded lessons. This is great if you're self-motivated and self-organized. We have access to LSAT Prep Plus. tuition $7.99 USD. And I believe we definitely have promo codes. You can email Desmond. He was the one who helped get this set up. So if you don't catch his email, you can absolutely go ahead and get that. And you can contact us. You can also enroll online, or you can call in. The promo codes work in both cases. Are there any questions?
No, not that I can think of.
And I know it's a lot of information, and so it's not unusual to have questions afterwards. So absolutely do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions. It's a lot of information. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to learn. But this is also a process that you can do well at and be successful. We've helped lots and lots and lots of students over the years. We know that this works. We know what students need in order to be successful. Certainly something to keep in mind that, like, this is something you can do. All right, I'm going to stop the